Welcome to the iPad Possibilities Podcast, episode 29, ForScore Possibilities. Welcome once again to the iPad Possibilities Podcast. I'm Tim and I'm your host, and for this week's studio show, I've lined up an interview with Isaac of ForScore. Now, if you haven't heard of ForScore, this is an application for your iPad that will turn your iPad into a big sheet music. That's what it does. It turns your iPad into sheet music. It comes preloaded with all sorts of free sheet music from Bach and different composers like that. But you can also load in your own sheet music via iTunes through the sync system that has in there. So this has been a fantastic app that I've been using and I've actually performed with on stage at a concert at my university that I go to. It's a great app, and I was really honored to be able to interview the developer of this app. So that's what I have for you today. But before we get to that, I'd like to mention that the sponsor of this show, the It's On My Way developers, have started a sale up till May 2nd to celebrate the release of the iPad 3G. And this application, if you haven't heard, is an application for your iPhone, but it also runs perfectly well on your iPad. And it will help you plan out your route as you try to go on. It's hard with Google Maps, I found, at least on the iPhone and even the iPad, to plan out multiple stops on a route. So with this, it plans out the best and most efficient way to get from point A to point B to point C and back home again. So grab it today for only 99 cents now. It's normally $2.99, but it's on sale until May 2nd due to the iPad 3G launch. So grab it today and help support this show by doing that. So before we move on to the main content of this show, that is the interview I had with Isaac, I'd like to mention that today I did get in my micro SIM adapter I talked about on Sunday and on Friday. So that has arrived. It looks exactly like described. So when the iPad 3G arrives in my hands this Friday, I'll be able to play around with that and let you know some different reports of how you can use this data card in different devices. And we'll be doing that Friday. So I'll let you know how that goes and what kind of experiments I've been able to run and see what works and what doesn't work. With that said, I'd like to present Isaac of the ForScore application for the iPad. Well, we are here today with Isaac of ForScore. And ForScore is an application for the iPad so musicians can basically carry around their entire sheet music collection with them if they so desire. So first off, Isaac, I'd like to just ask you, what's your background? Are you a musician yourself?
I was. I was a piano player for several years. When I was growing up, I took 7 years of piano lessons and then was part of several choirs and choral groups in high school and my first year of college. But that's all kind of, beyond me now. I think the most singing I do is probably in the shower, and I hardly play the piano anymore.
But you were able to take all of that knowledge that you learned back those many years ago and apply it here in this application.
Oh, definitely, yeah. If I didn't know how to read music, I'd probably be at a complete loss.
Are you new to the development game? How long have you been working with the iPhone and iPad and things like that?
Well, this is our first app, and it's a brand new thing. It's all kind of exciting and all kinds of new things that I'm learning. But I've been a Mac user for several years now and had my own iPhone for a while. I've always thought it would be interesting to develop for the iPhone platform, and then when the iPad came out, it was just this really amazing device that just, it seemed like it unlocked a lot of really cool ideas that just weren't possible on the iPhone. So that's kind of where my interest peaked.
Is there a bunch of different developers, or is it just yourself that works on the applications?
Our company is a whopping force of 2. I'm the more, I would say, visual and marketing type, and then I have my developer who does all the hard work.
Yeah, I can say for your very first app, it's very polished, and it looks like you guys have been doing this for quite a while.
Thank you. It's we put a lot of effort into making sure that it was a very solid, stable app. And, we both come from a background of a little bit of design. I was in graphic design school for several years, and my business partner has also dabbled in a little bit of graphic design. And so as far as like user interface and design is concerned, that's always been a really big, strong point for us, you know?
Yeah, and you mentioned stability. That's one thing. As I showed it off, I'm in college right now, and actually in the music school there. As I showed off to some of my friends and whatnot, they were asking stability because obviously, if you're in a performance and the app crashes, that would
Right.
be kind of a bad thing. So I can say it was very stable from when I was using it in
Good. That's
my
good
own
to hear.
performances. So, do you want to go into more of what ForScore is? Besides, as I said, it's an application to basically hold your sheet music. But beyond that, what else do you guys have inside of it?
Well, the the biggest points for ForScore are that it's a library of score or of sheet music. You have the ability to add your own files through iTunes, so you can load up your own music, whether it's a band, a full score for a band or an orchestra, or just solo pieces. Takes any kind of PDF, which is convenient and universal. And the biggest feature is the built-in metronome, which is both audible and visual. Visual thing is a big plus for us, just to be able to have something to keep time, but that isn't, knocking down your door or making a lot of noise if you're trying to perform with it.
Yeah, exactly. The visual metronome kind of shocked me because I knew you could do some cool stuff with the iPad, and that was just such a simple thing to do. And it was really helpful because as I use this for piano practicing. I was using your built-in scores for that. And when I was practicing with that, using the visual metronome, you don't notice it when you're just looking at it, but when you're actually playing, it really goes inside of your mind what the beat is without actually hearing the metronome, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's when I first saw it, I was a little skeptical. I was like, well, wait, it just pulses. So I didn't get it, and then I started to watch it a little more, and then I played with it a little bit, and I thought, oh, well, okay, this works because it's there. You can see it from any spot on the page. Uh, that's I feel like the execution was really good, and so far we've had a lot of really great feedback about it too.
What would make your application something that would kind of inspire musicians to kind of transition out of the paper environment and move to a paperless solution like
Yeah, that's one of the biggest pluses is that you have the ability to carry around an entire library of music that otherwise would weigh several pounds. The interesting thing, when you're really comparing hard copy sheet music and an app like ours, is that you have that ability to carry around all that music, but you also have the ability to turn a page quickly. It doesn't deteriorate like paper does, and ultimately, it's a smarter solution.
one thing I've been trying to cut down on is paper usage. I use Evernote and a bunch of different things like that, but for sheet music, I mean, this is perfect because, as you said, people do literally carry around pounds of paper. And especially as like a music teacher, I can imagine you have your entire, lesson plan for your private lesson students. You can just, give them the iPad to read off of, and that would be a fantastic way to, just carry on your whole library with.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what we intended it for.
What kind of features would you like to add to ForScore in the future? I know it's the very first release, but what are you anxious to add that you were hoping to have in the initial release that didn't quite make it?
Well, one thing that we've been trying to figure out is, in learning how to do this, is get the annotation where it should be so that you could really, mark up the actual page. And the initial release was put out with essentially a field that sat behind the page and allowed you to type in notes about, general notes about the score. But we've been working really hard over the last week to implement essentially a drawing tool that would overlay on the page so that you could mark it up just like you would with a pencil on your regular score, and incorporating, being able to erase it and save that kind of data in with with the score. And so that's been our biggest push, and we're hoping that we'll get that submitted by the end of the week for review, and then hopefully it will launch sometime next week.
Doing a separate file over on top of the PDF, so the original PDF stays intact, and then you have this linking file to make that happen, or
the complicated details of that are a little bit over my. That's.
Yeah, I'm always curious how applications do that, because I'm interested to see what Evernote will eventually do with that. Hopefully, for marking up PDFs, because that's, I would imagine, the easiest thing to implement.
Yeah.
Have you been getting user feedback as far as other features that they're finding that they have a need for as they're playing around with?
Yeah, we've had some really great feedback. The really exciting thing about releasing an app like this on a platform like this, with a technology like this, is that people are really willing to share their thoughts and their feedback. So we've gotten a lot of really good ideas. We definitely learned that adding that annotation function was really, really important to our customers. And so that's been our big push. We're also looking at being able to manage your file structure, create playlists and set lists, so that if you are going to go and perform with this, you can line up a series of songs to play from, so that you don't have to go searching for them each time. Things like that. Just getting, we've got faster page turns that'll be released hopefully with this next revision. All those kinds of little tweaks that we're realizing are really important to people.
Yeah, the page annotations are huge for any ensemble performer, especially as you're working with a group, if they make cuts or something like that. One thing I'd love to see, I don't know how possible this is, but just cutting out entire staffs that you just skip over when you're performing, and just saying, hey, get rid of this piece of the PDF. I think that's a little advanced, but I think that'd be kind of cool to have.
Yeah.
Especially with pit scores and stuff like that, where you literally get rid of 5-10 pages that you just don't even play.
Sure.
With the 4.0 iPhone release, I'm sure some of that stuff will trickle down to the iPad. Did you see any new APIs in there that would enhance a ForScore in any way?
The biggest thing that stood out to us was the metadata that comes with the PDFs. Being able to recognize some of that. Now, we're not quite sure what's going to come through out of that particular feature, but things like music genres or composers, or that kind of data that can be embedded into the PDF, could potentially be recognized by the app, and then whether it's an auto sort or a searchable feature, something like that. That's what really kind of got us excited.
Yeah, I know there was a bunch of, I guess, 1,500 APIs announced, and I'm on the developer program, but I don't understand all of that kind of stuff. But that's pretty cool that they added that.
Yeah.
One cool thing I thought I'd share with you is I had ForScore on Saturday, and then that evening I scanned all my music I have for my band I'm in. It's Butler University's concert band, and on Sunday we actually had a concert. So I was testing this out. We did a dress rehearsal, and then for the concert I actually used ForScore in my iPad to do the concert.
Wow.
And it was kind of funny. Right before we started, my director did not know I was using an iPad during the dress rehearsal. And then my stand's, very visible to him coming on stage, and he was just, cracking up backstage, laughing at me. What are you doing with an iPad on your stand with your music on there?
Yeah.
So how did it work? It worked really well. I was pleasantly surprised, because one of the things I was worried about was with the bright lights on the stage, how that might affect seeing the screen. And it didn't really affect it at all, though I had the angle a little bit differently, but it worked out really well. And one of the nice things was I was able to turn it horizontally, and even though you only get half the page, with a simple, you don't have to flick it hard, or it doesn't matter how hard you flick it or how light you flick it, it'll instantly go that second half, which I thought was a great feature to have in there. And page turns were super easy, which is something that I've long wanted out of a sheet music app, because I remember in rehearsals before this how I'm evidently not the best with paper, and I miss a lot of page turns just because it's so slow trying to, work the paper and get it all working out all right. But with ForScore, it worked out really well.
Good.
So that was a fun, pleasant experience, and it had my director laughing, and I've been playing around with it at the piano and different things like that. And one thing I'd love to see is being able to categorize the built-in music by difficulty. That'd be a nice feature to add because I'm not the best pianist, so I was trying to find the easier songs, and I found some.
Sure.
But that was a lot of fun just sitting at the piano and playing with it.
Mm-hmm.
What other use cases do you see with ForScore besides just performance? Are there any?
Well, to be honest, we didn't really intend it to be a performance app. Yeah, it was more the ability to carry around a large library of music on a single device and have it easily accessible was the whole reason we decided we wanted to use it or to create it. And it's funny because so many people are like, oh, this will be great for my concert. Oh, this will be great when I perform, on, and we hadn't even really made it to that point as we were developing it. So it's exciting to hear that people are confident that it will really help them in a performance. I think other possibilities as far as its music educators are concerned is that you could be able to hand an iPad to a student with a bunch of music loaded onto it that the student could then go through and play from and carry from home to lesson to home, and then eventually have that ability to annotate it and use it as a real teaching tool. Same with practices, and I remember when I was in a choir in school, we had all of our sheet music, and I went back to my dorm room at the end of class, and there wasn't really a great performance space or a way to really practice. And so having the portability of a device like the iPad and have an app like that is, I think, really speaks to those kind of situations where you wouldn't be able to otherwise really conveniently use sheet music, but with having that device present, you suddenly have access and the convenience of being able to do that.
Exactly. When you saw the iPad release, did you have any other ideas in your mind what possibilities that might bring to this device besides sheet music?
Not really. we came up with our great idea and we ran with it, and we just kind of plugged our ears and said la 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 to everything else that was going on because we were so focused on it. So it's our focus has been very singular, but we've had a lot of fun making this app, and we've really kind of found this passion for this kind of development, and we're trying to figure out what our next great idea is. So our ears are unplugged a little bit.
I was wondering about this might be more in the future, but a way to turn the page without actually using your hands at all. Do you think through Bluetooth or any dock connector you could have an iPhone client or something that I'm not sure how it all work, but something like a foot pedal type device that would turn pages? Is that a possibility?
There's been a lot of feedback regarding that particular point. A lot of people, are looking for an even easier way to turn a page, and we totally understand that it does get a little technical. Ultimately, we're software developers and not really hardware savvy. But I know that things like that exist for other devices, and we're definitely open to the possibility, but it's not really set out in the near future.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, looking at my iPhone, it's like, how would I do that effectively using an iPhone to interact with the iPad for this app? Because you can't really put your foot down your iPad to turn a page. That would not
You're right.
work out too well, I don't think. I mean, you have to perform barefoot or something. One cool thing I was thinking about is you can start making the case for having multiple iPads with this app, and then say owning a piano app or some other instrument app, and you can start to make the case, hey, I need two iPads because I can display content in this app and then use an instrument app to start interacting with it.
Yeah. I honestly I haven't even played with many of the instrument apps that are out there. I know there's a couple, at least, and there have been several for the iPhone as well. But that I think that even takes the portability to the next level. I don't have a piano here at home to practice on, but if I had some sort of device where I could, practice or compose or whatnot in tandem with a score reader, that would just make it all the more easier.
Yeah, completely. And another case for multiple iPads, I was thinking about this is I'm not sure how this would work either. How I said the foot pedal stuff, and I was thinking with two iPads, I was wondering, would it be able to you sync between two ForScore apps? So you could have 2 pages of sheet music as you have 2 pages of paper. I'm wondering, is that possible through Bluetooth to have two apps running that communicate with each other like that?
I think that's definitely a possibility. I think the tricky part comes when you're looking at stability and reliability.
Right.
Having a wireless connection in the middle of a performance could get a little dicey. I think the possibility for it to fail is higher than most people would probably like.
Okay.
Um, and in that case, you could look at doing some sort of networked, a wired connection or something. I don't really know the details of how you would get into that, but I think it's a fun concept. I don't know what the execution would be like.
Right. Yeah. Do you see any other like musicians? That's a pretty vertical market. There's a lot of musicians out there, but not everyone's a musician. What other similar type of fields do you think will have custom applications to kind of enhance their day-to-day life, getting rid of traditional tools like paper, for instance?
Well, I feel like we've tapped into a market that we didn't realize was so passionate about their work, and it's been really neat to hear feedback from people who have been looking for something like this for a long time, or who haven't been able to find quite what they want. And I think as the iPad gains popularity and you know kind of a more pervasive role in society, I see, as far as niche markets are concerned, I see there a lot of room for growth. When I hold the iPad in my hand, I feel like it's a clipboard. It's about that same size. Um, it could, like a clipboard full of paper, it's about the same weight too. So, any type of role where you'd have something like that, I think could be a really uh, interesting possibility to explore. What if it's a big note-taking device, or some sort, charts, medical charts, or any. I think any niche where you have a large amount of paper that's normally used that you could then replace with a device like the iPad. It's a really cool thing. And when we come back and look at what we've done and what we've accomplished so far, we realize that out of a very passionate market, we've released an app that we really, really wanted to make, and it's been great to hear all this feedback and to be able to develop new features. But ultimately, we're really happy with the ability to make an app like this that fit our needs, essentially. And so it's fun to see how it's going to develop, and I think there's a really great future in store for us and for the iPad development as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you mentioned the clipboard comparison. I've never really heard it that way, but as I'm walking around with it, I just carry it in my arms in the iPad case, the Apple case, whatever they sell. And as you mentioned that, it feels exactly like a clipboard, the same size and even weight when you add paper to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a digital clipboard that I actually use this as my iPod now because it's in my arms anyway when I'm walking around campus. It's much more convenient to. It's already my arms. Why use an iPod, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
One last little possibility I thought of recently as I'm using this is more on a wide scale usage in an ensemble. I'm not sure if this would be possible either, but say a conductor has a master copy of the ForScore app, and the ensemble has a client software to that the conductor is able to push out entire parts to the ensemble. Is that something that you think would be possible with an app like ForScore?
I think the possibility is there. I think that goes back a little bit to the idea of having two devices linked together wirelessly and just that kind of reliability with a wireless network or, Bluetooth or whatever. Getting into that gets a little dicey, especially when it comes to performance. In a practice setting, I think it could be possible and it could be really workable, but there's a lot of unknowns there,
Right, because I was thinking just now as I was asking that, you'd have to identify each iPad as Clarinet 1, Bassoon, oboe.
Sure, yeah.
That'd get pretty complicated really fast.
Yeah. Now, being able to divvy up score and then push it to individual devices, from a syncing type of a standpoint is definitely a possibility. But as far as like a wireless push or something like that, that gets a little more complicated. It's the way I understand it.
Sure. Well, I had one final question. It's on the show notes. I was wondering, there's some people I've been reading online that they would rather just get a regular PDF viewer. What would you say to that kind of audience that doesn't quite get ForScore?
We developed ForScore because it was something that we wanted to do, and it's coming from our background, we see a lot of apps that are lacking in a lot of ways, and so what we tried to do with ForScore is put out an app that is really solid that we could then build on and grow with as we grow and as we find new uses for it. A lot of people might say, "Oh, well, this is just a PDF reader. Why is this any different?" Well, first of all, you have your built-in metronome, which is really convenient for practice and for performance if you need a metronome visually. As we're progressing, with the possibilities of full annotation and a really dynamic way of marking up your score and having file management done in the future, I think ForScore will become a very useful tool that musicians will recognize as something that's important and valuable to them.
Yeah, I agree completely. Do you have any final thoughts before we end this interview today?
No, I just thank you for letting us on here and giving us the opportunity to talk about our app. It's kind of fun to talk to strangers about it and even think of those possibilities. A lot of the questions you brought up were points that we hadn't really considered before, just because we've been so focused on working on this app and what our goals for the app were. So it's great to know that there are minds out there that are thinking continuously about the possibilities and that people are willing to listen to them.
Yeah, well, I have to thank you for being on the podcast as well, because I'm always very excited to meet and talk to developers, because I'm trying to learn how to develop right now, and it's great hearing from those that are actually doing it and doing it really well.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Isaac, for being on this show. Well, that concludes the interview I had with Isaac of ForScore. I apologize for the audio. I'm not sure why it sounded like that. It sounded a lot better during the Skype call. So I tried to clean up as best as I could, and I hope that sounded all right for everyone listening. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do that in one of a few different ways. First off, in iTunes, you can support this show by subscribing in iTunes, rating the show in iTunes, and reviewing the show in iTunes. Those are of huge help bringing the visibility of the show up in iTunes so others can experience this show and listen to this show And I'd really appreciate just 60 seconds out of your life to review this show and let others know what you think of the iPad Possibilities podcast. You can also monetarily support the show by donating to the show. You can do that at thepossibilitiesnetwork.com. Just go to the iPad page, scroll down, and go to helps him buy an iPad. And that helps run this show, help me get accessories and things to help bring to you, to offer new possibilities to the iPad that I would not have been able to review and do otherwise. And you can also support the show by purchasing the iPad Possibilities podcast app. It's found in the App Store for $2.99, and with that app, you get the shows a full 24 hours in advance. You get the shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday instead of Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And starting this week or the week after, we'll have special video content only available via this application, or very soon, the premium version of the iPad Possibilities podcast. So grab it today for $2.99. So until the Friday, Saturday show, this is Tim Chatton of the iPad Possibilities podcast. We will talk again.